the first time that you are watching my YouTube channel, my Paranormal and Mystery TV. The Blair Witch Project is a cult movie released in 1999. But how does the Blair Witch Project film really end? Which is the explanation of the end? And what about the real witch? Because the Blair Witch doesn't exist. However, I'm not a superficial person for all the people who know me. And you know that I love to delve into the deep to discover the truth. And I can tell you that the Blair Witch called Ellie Kedward never existed. But the real witch existed, and her name was Moll Dyer. So, in few minutes, you will watch incredible videos about all the questions you have been making for too many years, and who really was the real Blair Witch, with very rare official documents, in this case not a fiction. So, the Blair Witch Project is an independent thriller horror film released in 1999, directed by Daniel Myrick and Eduardo Sanchez, starring the beautiful Heather Dunaway, Joshua Leonard, Michael C. Williams. So they used their real names and surnames. And at the time, people really wondered if this story was fictional, or really that these three young students disappeared in this bewitched forest. And they, of course, play the role of Heather, Josh, and Mike. The movie was directed by this couple of debut directors, authors, using the technique of mockumentary, aka found footage. The Blair Witch Project 1999 is still one of the lowest budget movie with the highest grossing in all the story of the cinema. The movie was shot in 1997 with these two newcomers, actors, and think about that it took only 8 days to shoot this kind of found footage film. And the movie was shot in Maryland, in the National Park Seneca Creek. And I can tell you that I'm really happy and proud not to be so young as many people think about. Because think about that in 1999 I was an adolescent. So only people of that period, 1999, who was adolescent like me or older than me, can understand what happened when the Blair Witch Project was released at the cinema. It was really a huge impact, not only at the cinema, but really on the society, because we never watched at the cinema something like the Blair Witch Project. And there was a real huge media hype that arose this movie. Think about that there was almost a mass hysteria, and all the people rushed to the cinema, and there were so many people who fainted at the cinema while they were watching the Blair Witch Project. And other people felt so bad that the cinemas had to call ambulances and made them take to the hospital. And I can tell you that this mass hysteria also hit me and my family, because think about that my father doesn't like horror movies. No, but when the Blair Witch Project was released, he immediately went to buy the tickets, and for all the family and me with my whole family, as soon as the Blair Witch Project was released, we were in the first row at the cinema to watch the Blair Witch Project. And while the movie was at the cinema, when I was at the cinema, 2 people fainted. Personally, I tell you, it didn't happen this to me or my family, because I was a tough teenager, as you know. But it was really something, it was a real phenomenon of that age. So people who watch the Blair Witch Project nowadays can't understand the atmosphere, the almost mass hysteria happened in 1999 because of the Blair Witch Project movie. And as I told you, the Blair Witch never existed, but in every legend there is the truth. I studied and delved this, and I found the real witch that many people have understood. The directors got inspired. I'm talking about the witch Moldair. So, there had been 2 sequels, Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2 released in 2000, and then Blair Witch released in 2016. Of course, not comparable with the first, the Blair Witch Project. But after all this time, most of the viewers haven't still understood how the movie really ends up. And who was Mulder? Let's watch the videos! Warning! Some images could disturb the sensitivity of the viewers.
We won't be that far from any help. It's not dangerous.
I wasn't doing
That's
shit
all.
all day!
If we get hurt or if we die up here, it's your fucking fault! It is your fucking fault!
Please help us!
The Blair Witch Project opens with this text. In October of 1994, 3 student filmmakers disappeared in the woods near Burkittsville, Maryland, while shooting a documentary. A year later, their footage was found. And in this footage, we see the 3 kids getting ready for their big project. We see the raw footage of them goofing around, starting to film their documentary about a local legend, the Blair Witch. At first, they interviewed the local folks for anything they know, before deciding to go out to a rock in the middle of the woods that was supposedly the site of a ritual murder. And all the while, they filmed their journey for a behind-the-scenes look. They camp the night, but tensions already begin to build. Heather, the leader, claims to know where she's going. The others have their doubts. The map is lost. And bit by bit, they realize that they're stuck out here. The Blair Witch Project didn't invent the concept of found footage movies, but it does use a concept to a greatly impressive degree. Yes, it's a trick that helps keep the budget low, but it also helps make the movie far more convincing. The improvised feeling of many of the scenes really help to sell the idea that these are 3 college kids genuinely out in the woods. Hell, it's convincing enough that you can find many stories of people saying they were fooled into thinking it was real at first, and hearing their arguments, their reconciliations, before tensions boil over again, it really feels so real. Because the Blair Witch Project isn't really that there's a witch hunting them in the woods. The true horror is the fact that they're lost, and it's their fault, because they were headstrong.
No, I know we're not lost.
Oh, you knew that yesterday.
Because they were foolhardy.
I kicked that fucking man into the creek yesterday. It was useless.
Because they underestimated the natural world.
The area's not that fucking big.
Exactly. It's very hard to get lost in America these days, and it's even harder to stay lost, so we have that on our side.
In that line, when the nighttime falls, your entire world is only the inside of the tent. That's exactly what the Blair Witch represents. The unknown. The witch is made almost entirely of negative space, secondary and tertiary sources, a ritual murder from the 1800s, the story of a child who described a woman whose feet didn't touch the ground, a man who murdered 7 kids in the 1940s, strange rock cairns left in the middle of the forest, wooden trinkets hung from tree branches, these noises heard in the dead of night. But we never see the witch. Who are they? What do they want? What powers might they have? Are they even a witch as we picture the concept? Is it even human? Some in my screening were disappointed that we didn't get a reveal, but I feel like the movie gives us just enough to perceive the witch as a tangible threat. The witch's threat can be viscerally felt, despite never being seen at all. Nowhere is this embodied more perfectly than this iconic shot. So iconic that it's the movie poster. Heather looks into the camera and delivers a broken apology to Josh's family, to Mike's family, to her own family.
Everything had to be my way. And this is where we've ended up. Hungry, cold, and hunted.
And notice here how she looks up into the pitch black negative space.
I'm scared to close my eyes. I'm scared to open them.
Do you want to know how really the Blair Witch Project film ends? Watch this, because as soon as I watched this movie at the cinema, this was my personal theory. Then other people seem not to accept this secret thriller in the Blair Witch Project. But after many years, this was my first theory, and many years later, even the directors don't deny it. Are you ready? Okay, let's watch.
Looking to do a documentary on the mysterious urban legends surrounding the town of Burkittsville, Maryland, formerly named Blair. She recruits her friend Josh to run the camera. Josh brings along his friend Mike to handle sound. Now, Heather and Mike have never met before, as evidenced by Heather saying,
"I guess you're Mike."
And,
"How are you, Mike? It's nice to meet you."
when we see the first shots of him leaving his house. This is confirmed by Heather's journal, released in its entirety online as part of that viral marketing campaign, where on page 2 she mentions not knowing him. Meanwhile, we're never quite clear on the relationship between Josh and Heather. Sure, the movie reveals that Josh and Heather definitely know each other, but there's a little more to it than that. The initial concept for the movie had Josh as Heather's ex-boyfriend, and even though that didn't really make it into the events that we see on screen, Heather's diary does give us some hints about their history. On page 13, as they prep to go into the woods, she writes, quote, "Josh doesn't listen to me at all, and he's supposed to be my friend. Mike is more respectful, and I don't know dick about him." A few days later, early on in their trip into the woods, she writes on page 16, Josh is always a surprise. So despite thinking they're friends, clearly Josh is antagonistic to Heather even before they're out into the woods and things start to go wrong. And to make matters stranger, neither Mike nor Josh is getting paid for their work on the movie. It's never mentioned in the movie itself, but Heather's diary fills in the details on both page 12 and on page 20. These guys are working for free on a movie that'll have them hiking excursion, and based off Mike's admission that the map looks like Greek to him,
This is Greek to me.
we would expect Heather to be leading the way. But in almost every shot, Mike and Josh are walking ahead of her, guiding the group as if they already know where they're
The guy is
satisfied, outright refusing to walk. Josh then demands to see the map.
Check
Yes,
the map.
Now, we don't see the handoff as they cut to them camping for the night, but the next morning the map has gone missing, with Heather convinced that she gave it to Josh, saying it over and over.
Did you take it? I'm serious, I don't have it.
I gave you back the map, Heather.
I gave you the map.
I gave you back the map.
Josh, of course, denies it, and yet, based on the footage we saw from the night before, Josh was the most likely person to last have it based on him demanding to see it over and over.
Give me the map. Heather, give me the map.
With the map gone, tensions are obviously high, and despite Heather trying to get them to continue moving in the direction they were headed, it's Mike, Mr. It's All Greek to Me, who determines which way they'll walk.
We're going this way because that's the way we've been going for a day. We're going this way, and that's it. We gotta come across something.
A guy who, up to this point, has shown no enthusiasm for guiding the team. It's another
Despite the tragic situation,
this. Shortly after the map blow up, Mike and Josh start joking around like nothing happened.
Can we keep going, please?
Now we're gonna chill out.
In a
Mike reveals
the map into the creek.
It was useless. I kicked that into the creek.
What?
The compass.
Who has the compass? Mike! And before Heather can hold on to it, Josh immediately demands it away from her. In other words, their only other navigational tool is constantly controlled by and manipulated by the two guys, and not Heather. And as one last nail in the coffin, the three had also decided to just head south, following the creek until they hit something. If years of watching Man vs. Wild has taught me
even the survivalist book.
see at the beginning of the movie. And yet, despite everyone agreeing to this plan that surely would work at a certain point, at 42:22 in the movie, the guys just stop and alter course. Heather asks why they've changed up the plan, and gets literally no response. They just decided to, and Heather has to be along for the ride. Again, what we're seeing is the two guys subtly manipulating Heather to go in the direction that they want to go, to lead her around the woods and scare her for a few days, eventually leading her to the murder house. But hold on, you might say. Sure, Josh and Mike might be behaving strangely, but what about all those supernatural things that are happening to them out in the woods? And it's a good question, except for one thing. There aren't any supernatural things that happen out there in the woods. One of the first big ones is the tent being surrounded by piles of stones when the group wakes up and breaks camp.
Then, suddenly, Josh disappears. disappears.
Take the map and kick it into the creek. The period between us knowing the map exists and the map going missing is a short window that takes place overnight. What about that bundle of sticks that shows up later? Well, it's just a bunch of sticks that you can build at home. Their behavior.
Flames are licking you like the devil there, Josh.
In her diary on pages 18, 21, and 23, 3 times, she specifically calls out either how she doesn't believe that they're sleeping through the night, or how surprised she is that they're able to sleep in the middle of all this scary, life-threatening ghost stuff. And she's 100% right. It would be weird for anyone to sleep like that when their lives are on the line. But they know it's not their lives on the line, it's hers. So unless they have to react to some spooky stuff,
Even the
she's supposed to keep the
spooky.
illusion alive. They're getting their Z's on. She even gets so close to the truth, making the important observation in her diary that the strange things only start to happen when she...
Are you ready to the shocking ending?
It's pretty ambiguous, so let's piece it together beat by beat. Josh goes missing, and a few nights later, Heather and Mike hear Josh's screams deep into the woods.
Josh?
Mike, who earlier has shown himself to avoid chasing after noises in the dark and has the strongest self-preservation instinct,
Michael, are you saying you're not coming down?
I ain't going down there.
leads the charge out of the tent, pushing Heather to hurry up and follow him.
What? Where are you going?
In the pitch black of the woods, again, it's Mike who sees the house,
It's a house.
and then a few seconds later goes inside without hesitating. When Heather shows some trepidation about going inside, he yells at her,
Come on, in the house.
Once inside, he hears Josh's cries, and Mike loudly shouts that he's headed upstairs
I'm going upstairs.
to find him, with Heather shortly behind. At the top of the steps, he stands there waiting. It's only once Heather is upstairs that Mike quickly changes his mind, determining that the sounds he's hearing are apparently from the basement and not the second floor. Loudly shouts out again that he's coming down the stairs,
Come on, I hear him downstairs.
then rushes down, this time without waiting for Heather. And remember, this is all happening in a completely dark house that Mike has allegedly never seen before. Yet he finds the cellar staircase easily. We see Mike go down into the basement, and then the handheld camera is dropped, as most people assume Mike is attacked by the witch. From there, Heather catches up, sees Mike standing in the corner, gets attacked herself, and drops her camera. End of movie. Now this whole sequence is character at this point, especially charging into what is obviously a murder house hidden inside the forest. He also seems very comfortable with the layout of said house, even though it's completely dark. And how could Mike mistake sounds coming from the basement as coming from the top floor? And also, why shout where you're going before you go there unless you're trying to signal where you're going to someone else? But perhaps most suspicious of all, if he truly got hit by something in the basement, causing him to drop his camera, why would he be well enough to stand in the corner and not respond when Heather calls his name? In fact, after decades of being tight-lipped about the end of the movie, it's a detail one of the directors, Eduardo Sanchez, called out when he did an AMA on Reddit. When asked what really happened at the end, Sanchez doesn't give a clear answer, but remarks about Mike, quote, "Why wouldn't he turn to Heather's screams?" Seeming to imply that he has the ability to turn around and just chooses not to. And it's a decision that would be difficult to explain until you consider it was part of Mike and Josh's plan. They would lure Heather to the house, get her to the top floor, as far from the cellar as possible, then Mike would create some separation by running away. That buys them time where Mike can go stand in a corner that Heather can see from the bottom of the stairs, distracting her and leaving her vulnerable to an attack from behind, an attack by Josh. Blaming it on a supernatural force that uses Josh's voice to lure people around the house, brings Mike downstairs, hits him on the head, possesses him to put him into the corner and stand there, while it goes around to hide from Heather so it can hit her on the head, murdering her, and then going back and then killing Mike again, is actually harder to believe. A murder plot where the two guys are complicit is actually the simplest solution here.
And now, which is the story of the Blair Witch according to the movie The Blair Witch Project, in which the witch is Ellie Kedward. Watch.
Unusually high number of children laid to rest here. Yet no one in the town seems to recall anything unusual about this time. Yet legend tells a different story.
The in-film narrative states that Burkittsville, Maryland used to be called Blair back in the 18th century, until one of its residents named Ellie Kedwood was tried for witchcraft in 1785. Responsible for a long string of deaths and unexplained disappearances since, she remains an imposing figure in the town's folklore, maintaining long periods of dormancy, only to re-emerge and bring about a reign of terror on those who enter her domain.
She was sitting down in the water, splashing around like a small child would do.
11 witnesses saw a ghostly hand come up from the creek and drag this little girl underneath.
With powers stemming from witchcraft, change her appearance to suit whatever will frighten her victims most. In the book The Blair Witch Cult, she's described as a monstrous hag who levitates, while others have described her as an old woman dressed in all black, or a naked elder covered in thick black hair. Several theories have been put forward to explain her motives. One is that Ellie has claimed the Black Hills as her home and is simply killing intruders. In the promotional prelude, Bill Barnes claims that the witch is actively creating her own mythology, periodically killing in order to keep her legend alive.
And they come up to Coffin Rock.
And then these men were laid out.
There was a first search party dead on this rock.
While another theory suggests that she's sustained by human sacrifice. Regardless, her habit of stalking and tormenting her prey for days prior to killing them, often through extremely brutal methods, proves that she's a vengeful and unforgiving sadist. They don't know the half of it. They decide to head south using Mike's compass and discover figures suspended from trees around them.
What?
There's the stuff down here!
What kind of stuff? What?
This is followed by more strange sounds that night.
Ellie Kedward, the Blair Witch, never existed, but later I'll show you the real witch. The film got inspired from Moll Dyer. And now watch these incredible curiosities.
Fear of God into an entire generation of moviegoers. It's a brilliant story, except of course none of it's true. Well, not all of it is true.
The scariest movie of all time is a true story. This was the tagline used for the Blair Witch Project.
Ed and I both, try to do something different with a genre that we felt was kind of getting a little old. So we felt Blair was in that same spirit. Something that was a psychological horror.
The idea for the movie came while directors Daniel Myrick and Eduardo Sanchez were still attending college at the University of Central Florida. They found reality shows and documentaries about paranormal activity scarier than traditional horror flicks, and crafted a plan to create a found footage horror. Together, they and a few others started Haxon Films and got to work producing their movie.
We came up with this, real-time format to shoot, the solid 8 days out in the woods and keep the actors immersed in their characters as much as possible.
Knowing that success would ultimately depend on the cast, they auditioned thousands of actors before finally landing on Heather Donahue, Michael C. Williams, and Joshua Leonard.
We weren't told much as far as specifics of what we would be doing.
Even in the audition process, we've said, if you don't like camping, if you don't like being out in the woods, if you don't like being scared, don't even try out for this part.
According to Heather, not much information was given about the film or their characters, just a short description about a completely improvised feature film to be shot in a wooded location. Sanchez and Myrick had written up a short 35-page script, but that was it, and the rest of the dialogue was going to be improvised by the actors. Their performance of being lost in the woods were amazingly realistic because the poor guys were actually lost at least 3 times. The scene where their tent starts moving violently was also unscripted. The directors essentially ran out and began shaking their tent without warning, causing them to freak out.
At last count, the film had taken nearly $150 million in outstripping the likes of Scream, which cost 100 times as much to make, and capturing the imagination of audiences who, a year ago, were laughing along with in-jokey teen terror flicks.
Supported by an amazing sound design and terrific improvisational skills from the main cast, the horror of 3 friends confronted with unimaginable malice is palpable. Following its release, there have been thousands of found-footage low-budget horror movies emulating the Blair Witch Project, but none feel as real, innovative, or have left a legacy and impact on the genre quite like it did. But with that said,
an event than a movie. It's almost impossible to capture how people felt watching this film back in 1999 compared to how you'd view it now, because nothing like that had really happened before.
And now, are you ready to discover who the real Blair Witch was? This is her story. I'm talking about Moll Dyer. Think about that once a year there is a festival to honor Moll Dyer in Maryland at Mall Dyer Rock. Watch.
A witch, or a woman accused of being a witch, who in 1697 was chased out of her tiny home after it was set aflame by the people in her village on a bitter winter evening. A witch who, fearing for her life and having no place to go, froze to death on a rock with one hand pointed to the heavens, calling down a bitter curse on those who murdered her. That 875-pound rock, Mall Dyer Rock, with the imprint of her frozen hand and knee on its surface, now sits in a special place of honor in Leonardtown, outside of historic Tudor Hall. The folklore says Mall Dyer came from the old country to settle in Maryland. She became known as a healer in her small village, practicing herbal medicine, and preferred the company of the local indigenous people with whom she traded healing wisdom to her own. She was physically unattractive, so ugly it hurt, one colonist wrote in a letter, and preferred to live alone, away from the rest of her village. A 2-year drought began in 1695 and decimated the village's crops and livestock. It was followed by a brutal, record-cold winter and an outbreak of deadly disease, probably flu. The villagers looked for a cause of their horrible misfortune, and as was sadly common in that era, fingers naturally pointed to the lonely old woman and convenient scapegoat, the witch Mall Dyer.
Mall Dyer escaped from her house, and a few days later,
a child looking for his family's lost cow found Mall Dyer's corpse, frozen on a boulder, one arm outstretched to the sky. When her body was removed, her hand and knee had mysteriously left indentations in the rock. Since then, many stories about the strange and unsettling powers of the Mall Dyer Rock have been shared among locals and written about in the press. People are afraid to touch it because of its reputed bad luck, the remnants of her dying curse.
In 1968,
the rock was located by the St. Mary's Historical Society, and in 1972 it was moved to a prominent location in Leonardtown. Mall Dyer, I learned, is one of the inspirations for the Blair Witch Project.